This is a very interesting one. This is a pilot based out of Canada. Basically, they have a system where all the coaches in Canada go to these mass training camps. If they go to these mass camps, they have hundreds, thousands of coaches that come together that learn about the sport, they learn about the latest equipment, the latest rule changes, and they use that as a recruiter type of function. They implemented a virtual world for one of their latest activities, and they're seeing about a 14 times return on investment to all the partners that are associated with that organization. Then you look at the large companies. Large companies drive technology. Right? If you look at companies such as Google Earth, right? That's almost like an everyday application these days. And look how quickly that has become ingrained in how people do business today. You can look at Microsoft. They're using for emergency simulation training through virtual programs so that they can actually train employees that may be involved in a hazardous type of a training environment. They do it online to take some of the risk out of that training. IBM, the university collaboration, they have in Second Life. And you've got Sun, who's doing Wonderland, which is an open source virtual environment. Very interesting. Very clumsy right now, but it's very interesting in that it's open source. So anybody can go into here and start playing with virtual worlds. And Nortel, which is going to be the application I show you later. There's going to be a phase of adoption of this technology. The first phase is going to be based off of cost savings. Okay, this I can drive this much, I can generate this much cost savings in my business with this type of technology. That's going to be the natural way technologies are adopted. The second is as these companies adopt the technology, they're going to look at, I can actually do this with the technology also. I can expand it. And that's a discussion I want to have as I take you through the Lenovo e-lounge, what their plans are for the e-lounge, much more than just selling PCs at this point. And then you're going to look at how this becomes strategic to your business, and that you have to have some aspects of this virtual environment in order to complete your business model. So it's not just about cost savings, it's actually about strategically placing your company to be competitive in the marketplace. Just wanted to show kind of a collection of technologies today and show them in terms of how are they integrated, how much are they integrated into your businesses today, as well as the type of immersion, how much do they bring you into the process. So you can kind of start down here at the bottom. We've got Facebook. Facebook is a very popular online social website today, but it's one way. You post something, you wait for a response. They post, you can post. So it's kind of like a one-to-one type of interaction. And I don't know of any businesses that are doing Facebook. There may be a few, but not too many because of the security issues related to Facebook. They're more creating their own versus using the one that's on the web today. You can go up to then voice conferencing. Do any of you not have voice conferencing capabilities? That's tried and true. That's almost as standard as dial tone is. Right? So you're going to have voice conferencing, but again, it has very, very low levels of immersion. It's basically you're listening to someone or they're listening back to you or you're listening to a group. So it doesn't allow you to get as immersed in the conversation as if you were face to face. Now if you go to the other spectrum here as far as like integration of technologies into your business place as well as immersion, the telepresence is probably the most or the closest technology we have today that gets you to that point. And that technology still, though, is you schedule the telepresence, you have to schedule the meeting, you have to book the rooms, unless you're fortunate enough to have it on your desktop, which by the way is very, very expensive still. And if you're going to have multiple people, it's very difficult to have brainstorming sessions because you want to be able to take data, to analyze the data, and have multiple contributions to data, almost as if you're face-to-face and brainstorming and collaboration. Telepresence is very hard to achieve that with today. So you'll notice in the upper corner I have Web Alive, but I could have replaced that with immersive internet applications. So that's the one I'm going to go through and basically show how it addresses some of these challenges that I've discussed. So Web Alive is a virtual environment. The environment is very immersive, it's very grabbing to people for several reasons. One, it's very visually stunning. You get in there and the colors, the resolution, it may not have as great as the resolution on these slides right now, but as you get into it with your PCs, you can actually see it's actually quite good. You can manipulate objects. So you can create your own avatar in this virtual world. You can go to an object, you can pick it up, you can rotate it, you can close it. You can actually look at the object that you're talking about. The audio. This environment has a spatial audio that allows you to hear the person beside of you, but not the whole room. In most virtual environments, if this were a virtual environment, you would hear everybody. You would hear all sorts of information and conversations, and it can be very tiring. With this, we have spatial audio, which means you only hear the person you're beside. You don't hear someone in the back of the room. But as a speaker, you can be given rights to throw your voice to the crowd. So there are ways that you can manipulate the way that you hear the sound in the area. It fits into the business world and that it can guarantee security. It can identify who's there. It can put you in the context of your meeting. So it accomplishes those three areas. Again, I'll give some specifics around that. And because of the structure of this virtual environment, it fits into your web browser on your system. So this goes behind your firewall. So you don't have to exit out of your environment, of your secured network in order to be able to access it. This is brought into your network. I'm going to cover three applications of virtual world technology. Now, I'm going to be using Web Alive as the example of the technology. So the first one is going to be the enterprise collaboration. Basically, how do we interact today as a business? How do we interact with each other? How do we interact with our customers, with our partners, with suppliers? I'm going to go into e-commerce, which is why I'm going to do an actual walkthrough of the virtual environment for Lenovo Easy Lounge. And then e-learning, what's happening from a learning perspective. So I'm going to cover those three markets. There are other markets out there, such as facility management, such as medical simulation, military simulations. But I'm going to focus on these three as just proof points and just to kind of help to give you a better idea of how you can further use the technology. Conference calls. All right, how many of you have actually been on a conference call and you can't hear it? Okay. How many of you couldn't identify who's speaking? And do you actually just get tired? Because you've got multiple people kind of talking over each other. You're trying to figure out, who just said that? It can get exhausting. If you're on a conference call for more than an hour, it's like, okay, where's the caffeine? That should be a requirement for any conference call, voice conference call. Telepresence helps this a lot because you can actually visually see who you're talking to, or webcams do help to a certain extent, but it only addresses some of these issues. And I covered some travel calls, so I won't get into those details. So if you look at some of the business needs that are developing now, that are more prevalent now than they ever have been, one is just the fact of multi-site development, multi-site interactions. How many of you work only with your local team? Any of you only work with a local team? Okay, so I mean, we work in it's a global environment. We're working across countries, we're working across states, across cities. The travel costs I've already talked about, make it being more green I've already talked about. The other I hit on a minute ago is just being able to have collaboration activity, or true brainstorming type activities, design activities where you have multiple people changing objects at the same time all around the world, okay? Which is very difficult today, even with the telepresence system. I'm not going to go through and read the slides. I think I've covered most of these. But the existing tools today, really the biggest limit is the free flow of information, being able to manipulate data. I'm going to cover these four aspects briefly about the technology in terms of these are generally four areas of concern when people are looking at virtual worlds as part of their business suite of tools. As far as, do I integrate this, do I not integrate it? These are decisions that you need to look at and that you need to consider as you go through looking at your options. So if you look at the context, a virtual world, talking about data line, well, you know who's speaking. You know where they're speaking from. You can actually know, okay, who's idle? Okay, well, this person's been idle way too long. You can actually go over there and have a side conversation. What do you think? Is this, do you think they're covering the right things? You can engage the person.